Welcome everyone to our CSW NGO parallel event, Amplifying the Voices on Ending Female Genital Mutilation. First, I would like to address the housekeeping rules. So I am kindly asking everyone to please mute your microphone at all times, unless of course you are speaking. For those who will be presenting or asking questions later, if you could please turn on your video. We're also asking you to please type your questions in the chat and indicate which one of the speakers you like to answer your question. This event addresses the issue of violence against women and girls through female genital mutilation in North America, Europe, and beyond, which hinders women from achieving gender equality and empowerment. Europe and North America caucus, together with Soroptimist International, bring together anti-FGM movements through different activities, such as training sessions, sharing mobilizations, strategies, good practices, education, legislation, and organizational experience. Our first presenter is from the United States. I'd like to introduce Maria Taher. Maria is a FGM survivor. She is also the co-founder and the U.S. Executive Director of SAHIO. Maria has worked in gender-based violence for over a decade in the area of teaching, research, policy, program development, and direct service. She has collaborated with the Massachusetts Women's Bar Association to pass legislation to protect girls from Fgm C. After starting a Change.org petition and gathering over 400,000 signatures, Massachusetts state became the 39th state in the United States to ban FGM last year in August 2020. She was also recognized as one of the 6 inaugural grant recipients for the Crave Foundation for Women. She serves on the steering committee for the U.S. Network for End Fgmc. Thank you and welcome, Maria.
Thank you so much for having me here today, Nina. I'm so happy to be able to speak about this event. And great, my slides are going up too, so that's perfect. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit briefly about just the history of the law in the United States. Nina had mentioned that I've done work in Massachusetts to bring about a state law. So it feels important to talk about what the history has been within this country as well. And if we could just go to the next slide. Right. So before I dive into the specifics about Fgmc legislation in this particular country, I wanted to provide a bit of context in terms of how many girls and women are impacted here. And I think that that's something that isn't well known yet. So the CDC has actually estimated that in 2012, over 500,000 women and girls in the US had undergone Fgmc or they were at risk of undergoing it. And this is really an important finding because it indicates a 3-fold increase from 1997 estimates. However, I want to share this number with a caution as well. That is most likely an underrepresentation because it takes extrapolations from countries that have nationally representative data, which are mostly within Africa and the Middle East. And then it applied immigration patterns to the United States to determine the number of women and girls impacted. Unfortunately, today, we do know that Fgmc is reported in over 92 countries globally, and it is inherent in the US as well. So likely the number of women and girls impacted is much higher than reported. So if we could go to the next slide. So with those estimates in mind, I just want to go over the history of legislation as it relates to the United States. In 1996, the United States passed a federal law making FGM or FGC illegal in this country. And that law was actually amended in 2013 to include a travel provision, which basically meant that there was a loophole previously where a girl could be taken out of the country to have FGMC done. So that loophole was closed in 2013. And however, even though we did have a law on the books since 1996, the first federal prosecution did not occur until 2017 in what's known as the US versus Nagarwala case. And that involved a US doctor who was charged with performing Fgmc on 9 7-year-old girls from Michigan, Illinois, Minnesota at a clinic in Detroit, Michigan. Then on 2018, one second. Then on November 2018, a US district judge actually struck down the US federal law on technical grounds, finding that Congress did not have the authority to pass the 1996 law because it had no impact on interstate commerce. Originally, the law was passed in 1996 in connection to the US Commerce Clause. And one important note to mention is that the travel provision that I mentioned that was passed in 2013, that was not challenged and it's still intact. And I just want to make mention of that because of the most recent federal legislation court case that is happening now in the US. But going back to the Nagarwala case, the Department of Justice originally intended to appeal that decision by the district judge. However, then they changed their minds and withdrew their appeal. As a result, some members of Congress intervened to try to save the federal law by asking courts for the ability to argue for an appeal in the case. And this was very highly unusual as well. And unfortunately, that federal court denied the House a motion, so they were not able to appeal that decision. To fix this decision, in 2020, the Strengthening the Opposition to Female Genital Mutilation Act or the Stop FGM Act, was introduced in Congress, and it really reinforced that FGMC is a criminal act. It strengthened the opposition to FGMC by stating that religion and cultural beliefs may not be used in defense of the practice. And additionally, it required that government agencies such as the Department of Education and the Department of Justice report to Congress the estimated number of women and girls impacted. And also, they are now required to provide a report on the actions that they have taken towards educating communities where this is prevalent and also preventing FGMC from continuing. This bill passed and was signed into law in January 2021. And finally, just coming back to that travel provision that I mentioned earlier, which again, it has not been challenged by law, but later in January 2021, a US federal grand jury in Texas returned the first ever indictment that a woman took a girl out of the country to have FGMC performed. And that occurred in 2016. So only a few details have really emerged about this case, but it'll be the first time that travel provision is actually looked at in a court of law. So we'll sort of see what happens moving forward there. Can we go to the next slide? Great. And I might actually skip over this, but this is just, again, to reinforce that the Stop FGM Act of 2020 really helped fix the situation that had been occurring over the last several years around the federal legislation. Great. So now I want to transition over to talking about state legislation. And in addition to federal legislation today, there are currently 39 states that have passed a state level law. Nina mentioned that I was involved with the work done in Massachusetts, and I will talk about that in just a second, but it's important to recognize that most of these states that have a law have only really passed it in the last few years in direct response to what was happening at the federal level on legislation. So I believe about 5 years ago, there were only 19 states that had a law, and now we have 39 states. Each state really is different in terms of the comprehension of the law. Some have simply criminal laws, others are more holistic. Massachusetts is a very holistic law, which includes community education, outreach, and civil remedies for survivors if they choose to go that route as well. The 11 states that do not have a law include Alaska, Washington, Montana, New Mexico, Hawaii, Mississippi, Alabama, Indiana, Maine, Connecticut, and Nebraska. So if we could go to the next slide. Actually, let's go to one more over. Great. So Massachusetts, again, is the latest state to pass legislation in August 2020. And I've been part of the task force that has been working to pass this law. And it actually took us about 7 years to get this law passed. And I'm happy to talk about it during Q&A or breakout rooms if people are interested. But it did take building a wide coalition of many different people from different sectors across the state, including healthcare professionals, government officials, child protective services, survivor community advocates, legal professionals, to really build up the need and really help highlight why it was important to pass a law in Massachusetts. And under the new law, anyone who commits FGM or transports them within Massachusetts or out of the state will face up to 5 years in state prison or a fine of $10,000. But I'm just going to quickly end by saying one more thing. So if we could go to the next slide, and I'll just quickly end there. I don't have a lot of detail to talk about it, but I mentioned Connecticut is one of the states that do not have a law. So I have been working with the Connecticut Coalition to work to implement a law. And we want it to be a very holistic piece of law too. And, it's very time critical because even though we do have a federal law, state laws fill in gaps that might be left over from the federal law. And again, that inclusion of community education and outreach is just incredibly important when we're talking about how do we work at a policy level to really create change and bring an end to Fgmc. And there are links listed here if you're interested in learning more about the work going on in Connecticut too. And I think I might be over in time, but I'm again happy to talk more about this issue in the Q&A section. So I will turn it back over to Nina.
Thank you very much, Maria. That was very informative, and I know how much you worked to pass the legislation and how much you sent out those, what was it, the petitions. And we all helped you. And of course, we are very proud that it did come through. And I know you continue to do all this work. So thank you so much. And we will hear from you again. I'm sure everyone will have questions in a little bit. Thank you. And our next presenter is Angela Peabody. Angela is also an FGM survivor. And she is the founder and the CEO of Global Woman Peace Foundation. She is also the first Liberian woman to ever publish a full-length novel and a very accomplished award-winning author. In 2016, she headed the special committee to complete an educational toolkit on FGM. She's going to be telling us about that, to be used by teachers, nurses, and counselors in the school districts throughout the United States. Angela worked through her organization to also pass legislation in Virginia to criminalize FGM and have it included in the family life education curriculum. I am very happy to invite Angela to please take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. And I just want to correct something. I'm not an FGM survivor. Good to be here. Thank you. Let's move to the next slide, please.
What is this, please?
Right here.
Okay. What's happening?
Somebody's talking. Global Woman Peace Foundation. I just want to give you a little bit of our history. We were established in 2010. Our mission is to empower women and girls through education to help eliminate gender-based violence, especially female genital mutilation and cutting. The little emblem you see in purple, Kids Reach Shield, is our training program, the name of it, and that's the special shield that we assign to it. Let's move to the next slide. We have trained teachers and school nurses. As Nina mentioned in my bio, we have just completed an educational manual, training manual for all teachers in the United States, most especially in Virginia, because Virginia has passed a law, the education law, that that mandates all schools, public schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia should teach FGMC. But we have a teacher's manual that is equipped with lesson plans. And prior to that, a few years ago, we participated in putting together a special educational toolkit that is found on our website that can be used by teachers and school nurses. We have trained the National Association of School Nurses. We were invited to their convention, the annual convention, and we had the opportunity to train school nurses from as far as Hawaii, Alaska, and all over the United States. We also were invited to the Virginia Association of School Nurses Conference, where we had the opportunity again to train those school nurses. Let's go to the next slide. We have been invited by school officials such as the Virginia Education Committee. We were able to speak to them on FGMC and address the different angles of educating children, the students, on FGMC. We also were invited by the school administrators, and we trained them as well to FGMC. Parents and Teachers Association, we have addressed. Next slide. Law enforcement, when we realized that a lot of police officers didn't even know, they had never heard of FGMC, we decided to contact them and train them. So we had the opportunity to train the largest county in the Commonwealth of Virginia, which is Fairfax, where we are located, and we trained them. We trained Montgomery County police officers and detectives in the state of Maryland, Loudoun County, which is a very fast-growing county in Virginia. We trained the sheriff and his deputies there, also in Arlington County. And then we were invited a few years ago to train 45 FBI agents to FGMC. We decided, since the law has been passed in Virginia, high schools had been inviting us just by classes, by high school classes, to come and speak to the lecture their classes, especially their senior classes. So we had the opportunity in December 2019 to go and lecture in person to Freedom High School in Loudoun County. Like I said, they are the fastest growing county in Virginia. And more recently this year, they invited us to do a virtual lecture to their senior class. Also, this year, we had the opportunity to do a lecture to the Chantilly High School senior class, which is in Fairfax County. Next slide, please. And so based on that, we started an internship program with high school students, something that we have never done in the past. We've always had used university students as interns, but we were approached by high schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia to have interns with us. And Chantilly High School is the first high school that has interns with us, and they are wonderful. The young lady you see in the picture, she is the lead intern, lead of the internship, high school internship. And now she has started a mentorship program within our internship program, where She gets girls to write to girls who have undergone FGM in West Africa to get a mentorship going and encourage them that they should stay in school and get their education as opposed to going and having FGM done to them. Next slide, please. We also do outreach, community outreach, and you see in the picture there, I'm actually in a garage educating a man who is the manager of the garage on Fgmc and telling him all about it. We go to churches, and we haven't been to any mosques yet, but that is in our future plan. We go to churches and we speak to them on Fgmc, women's groups and clubs. Next slide. And I want to thank you for having me today. I don't know if I went over, I hope I didn't, but thank you very much. And that is my contact information.
Thank you so much, Angela. This is very important and information that you have shared. We have some questions for you. I have copied them. So perhaps after the breakout groups, I can, if everyone may want to just go ahead and ask the questions, otherwise I can read them from the chat. So we really appreciate that. Thank you so much. For our next presenter, we have Dr. Anne-Marie Wilson. She is the founder and the executive director of the anti-FGM charity 28 Too Many. She works to provide knowledge, tools, best practices, models, and support networks which help anti-FGM campaigners and organizations, working with communities to bring about a sustainable change to end FGM. Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Wilson, you have the floor.
Well, hello everybody. My journey with 28 Too Many started in Sudan in 2005, where I met Fatima, a 10-year-old girl, pregnant from rape by the armed militia. She'd been taken for dead and was the only person to survive the armed raid that left her family and community dead. Fatima was alone and experienced type 3 infibulation. We gave her a safe delivery and arranged for her to be sent to a nearest relative, one she had never met. I looked at her, worried for her future. At age 5, she survived FGM, a form of child abuse. By 10 years, she had been the victim of conflict rape. She faced obstructed labour, trauma and complications, and sexual relations for the rest of her life. She might also have ended up with fistula incontinence due to her young age in future pregnancies. Next slide, please. 28 Too Many is an organisation I founded, and it's created to aim to end FGM in the 28 African countries where it's practiced and in other countries across the world where there are diasporas of practicing communities. Founded in 2010, we provide a strategic framework where knowledge and tools enable in-country anti-FGM campaigners and organisations to be successful and make sustainable changes to end FGM. We're building an information base including detailed country profiles for each country in Africa and its diaspora that practices FGM. We campaign and advocate locally and internationally to bring change and support community programs to end FGM. Our theory of change focuses on 3 things: collating and interpreting data research, where we present data primarily in country profiles and thematic papers and additional research products and fact sheets that we freely make available globally. We secondly influence influencers in a top-down approach using our data by engaging influencers and encouraging them to advocate for change, such as policy, legislation, within their spheres of influence and such the like. Last year, we launched our model law report, this time last year at CSW, a tool for policy and decision makers to help implement new laws or strengthen existing ones, and for activists to challenge current legal environments that may not be supporting efforts to end FGM. Our third aspect is supporting community change, a bottom-up approach. Based on our research, we develop and distribute advocacy materials, training tools and curricula that local organisations can use to bring effective change at a community level. We've also just launched our mobile app on the Google Play Store, FGM in Africa -28 Too Many. We particularly had in mind grassroots organisations and activists who work in rural locations who may not always have access to the internet, though it's freely available for everyone. Ultimately, change happens when legislation and policy with community action and education bottom up. And our approach is to play catalytic roles on both and to base our interventions on solid research. On the 6th of February, International FGM Day, Zero Tolerance, we launched our global Blue Ribbon campaign, which you'll probably see. It's the upside down HIV sign, but it means no in Arabic. And we launched that in North Pokot in northeast Kenya. FGM, as we know, is a form of violence that affects women and girls from over 90 countries. We specifically brought into focus in the SDG 5.3. In the light of the global pandemic, more women and girls are at risk of FGM, having had to end their education and submit to earlier child marriage to ease economic hardship. We're concerned at the adverse impact on the already vulnerable mental health of women and girls and their ability to advocate for their rights. We are further concerned at the inequalities highlighted in the global response to the death of George Floyd and the need to embrace fairness and equity, diversity and inclusion. Against this backdrop, we call on the international community to combat FGM in order to accelerate progress towards the target set by SDG 5.3 and specifically Indicator 532 to eliminate FGM by 2030. Next slide, please. Globally, 200 million women and girls alive today have had FGM, and that's 41.1 million in 2019. Next slide, please. And the next slide, please.
Dr. Wilson, we can't hear you.
I think we lost her connection.
Okay. Shall we go ahead with, we just go ahead with the next presenter, and then when Dr. Wilson returns, we will allow her to continue her presentation. Thank you. Aminata Bach is our next presenter, also from Europe. She is an End Fgm C advocate, originally from Guinea, West Africa, the second country with the highest FGM prevalence in the world, 97% according to the World Health Organization. Yet the women from her family and community are resilient and powerful. Aminata believes that women... I'm sorry?
Sorry.
Yes.
I lost it a while. I was just trying to, I don't know what happened. Can I carry on?
Yes, you can carry on. Thank you. And
Okay.
Aminata, we shall come back
the world of Zoom
shortly.
No, I'm off. Yeah, sorry. So next slide, please. I had a slide being put up and it got lost. Can we have
Welcome
the
back.
next slide?
We're happy to hear you.
Thank you very much,
We'd love to
Nina.
hear you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Lovely. Wonderful. Well, welcome to Chad. So these are some statistics that I thought I would just highlight for you. The prevalence of FGM on women in Chad is 38%, and 45% of women with FGM believe it should not continue, but that's only half the population. In Liberia, due to the taboo nature of FGM, we've only just recently managed to have a countrywide survey done as well, and the prevalence there is 38%, and yet 83% only aware of the practice.
S'il y a tu as des problèmes tels?
Okay, moving swiftly on. In Sierra Leone, the prevalence of FGM in women is 89%, and this is closely linked with the Bondo Secret Society as it is part of their initiation ritual.
Dr. Wilson, you are muted. Would you please unmute? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I didn't do anything. It's just been muted by the Where did you get up to?
We heard till the Bondo Society in Sierra Leone.
Lovely. Okay. So Somalia has just had a new national survey, and it's actually gone up from 99 to 99.2%. So it's actually increasing, but actually 76% are in favour of FGM continuing, and 72% believe it's a religious requirement, which it isn't. And finally, in one of the final of the 5 countries that don't have a law against it, in Mali, the prevalence of FGM in women is 89%, and 76% of women and 76% of men believe it should continue. So room for improvement there. We've just been working recently with activists in Sudan, where it's actually 87%, up to 98% in the north, which is one of the highest rates in the country. And we're delighted that our work has directly gone to helping change the law in Sudan. I worked there when I first met this girl called Fatima 15 years ago, but the law has just only recently been put in place. And we're delighted by that, but it's going to change the minds of the community as to actually move from a traditional practice where they believe their daughters need to be married off, and that's a difficult change. We have produced a report, again, freely available on our site, on social norms that people might be interested in. The delight for me is that the girl I met in Sudan 15 years ago would now be 25. Her daughter would be 15, and her granddaughter 5, and will actually be saved from being cut. God hopes. So the statistics there are 53% who believe it should be discontinued, but actually that's still only half the population. And finally, in Nigeria, where I worked for a long time in a fistula clinic in the north, the prevalence is 18%, but actually Nigeria represents 200 million women and girls who have had FGM, which is 10% of the global grouping. Just to mention briefly, in COVID times, we have switched our work to delivering participations online and taught advocacy, as well as working with major organisations, the UN, the police and government bodies. And as COVID spread through Europe, we feared girls would be cut behind closed doors. And as it hit Africa, we heard reports from activists that our ambassadors that girls were being subject to FGM as a precursor to forced marriage at times of financial hardship for families, having already been forced to abruptly end their education to work and lockdowns. All forms of abuse, including FGM, have soared behind closed doors as a result of lockdown. Charities and grassroots organisations have been blindsided by the pandemic, and we expect the consequences will be felt for generations long after the virus has been brought under control. Just finally, in Europe, there are 600,000 FGM survivors living in Europe. 180,000 are at risk in 13 countries alone. In the Istanbul Convention, much of the policy focuses on this area in the UK and has been protection and prosecution, but we ask the government now to place more focus on prevention strategies through grassroots engagement with effective communities in a process that engages in social norm changes. There are 137,000 women and girls in the UK living with the consequences of FGM, as according to 2019 statistics. But the number of new cases are suspiciously low just because of the pandemic. We believe they just haven't come forward and are not being clocked. Finally, we ask for strengthening in gender response data collection. We call for granular population data to better provide estimates of the prevalence of FGM in migrant populations. It's often not possible to rely on the incident reporting, and it's obvious that crime statistics don't reflect the extent of FGM. Mandatory reporting by health workers offers a very limited view of actual challenge. In the UK, the best source of population data is the census, yet the 2021 census that's just happening at the moment does not include comprehensive ethnicity and country of origin data, and thus limits our ability to clearly estimate the potential scale of the practice. We call on the UK government to include a more comprehensive list of ethnicity and country of origin questions for the next census, but also to take account of the extent of acculturation has impacted on the practice with second and third generation populations. In the UK, the official estimate often works with the assumption that there's been no real change in the risk profile, but we ask for new research to look at this with a two-pronged attack, as that has been done across Europe. Thank you very much for your listening. I apologise for these technical errors, which come from some other part of the planet, and I look forward to answering your questions in the next session.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. It was really nice to learn from you and have you here again. I see that there have been some questions, and I'm sure they will continue in the Q&A or maybe in the breakout session, such as how do you do the surveys? But thank you so much. And we will now go back to Aminata Bath, and we are sorry about the inconvenience. And although I started reading about Aminata, I would like to start again from scratch, just to make sure everyone hears who she is. We're very happy to have her join us today. She's an End Fgmc advocate from West Africa, the country of Guinea, next to Sierra Leone. I am from Sierra Leone. The second country with the highest FGM prevalence in the world, about 97% according to World Health Organization. Yet the women from her family and community are resilient and powerful. Aminata believes that women and young girls, if given the right opportunities, could achieve great things and make the world a much better place for us all. Her hope is to see a world free of harm, stigma, and discriminations for women and girls in her community. Aminata is an early years practitioner and a soon-to-be qualified social worker. Currently, she works with NHS England as FGM health advocate and La Fraternité UK charity as the head of Women's Support and Community Partnership. Aminata is the ambassador of End FGM EU network since 2019, which is why she's joining us today, and collaborated with Forward and Violence Against Women and Girls Peer Education on the Access Project, appropriate community-based care and empowering support services for migrant women affected by violence. Thank you so much for joining us, and you have the floor, Aminata.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Nina, for such a great presentation. I'm so pleased to be here. Can I confirm that everyone can hear me right?
We can hear you very well. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a great pleasure to be here today and share this panel with some powerful and wonderful women all around the world. Next slide, please. Okay, so here today, I'm here to talk to you in my capacity as an ambassador for the End FGM European network. So for those who doesn't know, so the End FGM EU network is a European organization actually that act as an umbrella or as a network for a total number of 30 organizations in Europe. And they are all scattered in different countries, around 14 countries in total. And all these organizations are working to end FGM here in Europe, but also around the world. Okay, so the network, briefly, just provide a platform for community voices to be heard and to be included within, I would say, policies, programming, and plans that would be addressing the work towards ending FGM, but also it gives opportunity to different organizations to come together, small and big, so they can partnership and they can create a more effective working relationship to make sure that the struggle against FGM is achieved. So next slide, please. Okay, so quickly about my role as an ambassador. So the ambassador program at the NFGM EU network concern two groups. So you got the young ambassador and you got the mature one that I'm part of, the senior ambassadors. So we, from the group I am part of, the ambassador, we are from different community or civil organizations, and we come from different parts of Europe, not only specifically from practicing countries, but also some ambassadors come from just European, I would say, countries, but they work with organizations that work with affected communities. So it's a diverse group, really, which make also the interesting part of the group and the dynamic between the members. So for me, my role is advocacy. I would say is to train people, but also to raise awareness of the issue of FGM, to make sure that the community voices are amplified and heard. I mean, on the outside at national and also international level, to make sure that we don't lose sight of the need of the survivors, for instance, but also the wishes and the dream of the all people and key actors working to end the practice. So quickly, I work with an organization, Nina said it when presenting me, called La Fraternité. And for being a survivor and also coming from La Guinée-Conakry, which is the second highest practicing FGM country in the world, I think this is an advantage because I speak from experience, I speak from knowledge, and I work with La Fraternité in London, that's in the UK, and we do community engagement work. We do workshops to make sure we educate the community here in UK about the different impact of FGM and the harm that this can cause to women and girls. But we also educate them about the law and also about the policies on the ground here, making sure that people know what to expect in case they decide to go down that route. But we also act as a bridge between the communities and also the professional working in the area of FGM, and also the services that are provided for survivors and for affected women. Next slide, please. So now we know that we still within in the pandemic. So I needed to take an approach to my presentation just to put it in the context of the pandemic we are living in and the effort that was made at the network in terms of ending FGM. Today, for instance, in the UK, just I would like to say we are commemorating the 1 year national lockdown we had since the pandemic started. And I just wanted to send my prayers and my thought to all families who has lost somebody during this pandemic. And I also want to say that how grateful I am, and we should be, for being here today, being alive, because it could have been different for us as well. So during the pandemic, it's been challenging to carry on working on the issue of FGM, of course, and to carry on doing the normal activities we've been having. But at the network, we carried on. We had to readapt, but some activities were still maintained. I've chosen to talk about three main things that represent an highlight for me. If we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so the first thing I wanted to talk about is the the well-being and mental support we had as survivors and also as campaigners, as community workers, as ambassadors. So we had few session workshop organized by the network just to support us as with this so famous and wonderful Dr. Laila Hussein, who supported us through that. Because what we lose insight sometimes as community workers working at grassroots level, during the pandemic, we had our own issues as well as everyone else. We were dealing with the anxiety, right, of COVID. But at the same time, we needed to be there for our communities. So we needed that space where we could share our anxieties, share our emotions and our fears, and also support one another, you know, because we are different, like I said, a group of different women and men working in Europe, all around Europe, and also supporting communities. So we came in together. I remember during that workshop, one of us had COVID already, and she was sharing her experience, and she was trying to support the women she was supporting in her community. So this was really crucial for us to have. So I thank the network really to putting this in place for us at that moment of time. And it was really, really useful and important. So it reminded us how we should also apply some self-care for now and then, make sure we don't lose ourselves as well within all this, what was going on. Next slide, please. So the second thing I wanted to talk about is the COVID-19 and FGM survey that was launched at the network. So this was really important for us as well to work on, because it came up with some highlight of what the women, the girls, but also the organization that are members. This I can just to remind, this was an internal survey among the ambassadors, but also the members of the network, to see, just to look at what the challenges they are really going through, and how that could be addressed, and how we could support each other, share some best practice here, but also to inform decision makers and donors on what was really happening on the ground, what challenges are arising from the pandemic, and what vulnerabilities women living with FGM and also girls at risk of FGM are going through, not only here in the UK, in Europe, but also outside Europe, in these practicing countries as well. So I took part on this survey, and from my personal experience working with the community here where I live in London, some of the things you will, just to remind, I may put a link in I will put the link in the chat after the presentation. You can have full report. The full report is on the website of the network, where you can access and read more about the finding and the recommendation from the survey. So yeah. 2 minutes over now. Thank you, Aminata. Okay, so I'm just gonna move to the next one. Right. So the last thing I wanted really to highlight with the work at the network is this webinar. It was a dialogue that was held with the network with some partners, and just to once again remind everyone that we are in a pandemic, but not to forget that in most of these countries where women and girls are affected by FGM, they are going through some challenges, some humanitarian crises. They are considered as fragile and vulnerable countries. So this was like a wake-up call. So this was a dialogue which was held within 2 months, and we came up with recommendation once again for decision makers and for policy makers, for donors, not to lose sight on girls and women during this crisis, not to put them at the bottom of the list, but to keep them there at the priority in all programming and all plan. in response to those to COVID-19, for instance. So I would stop here. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I'm available for any question afterwards.
Thank you so much, Amanda. That was very informative, and we're also grateful that you took the time to recognize and have a moment of silence for everyone who is no longer with us today due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I know you had mentioned that you will have to leave a little bit earlier, and so the few minutes over were graciously accorded because we know we're going to lose you in a little bit. But also, I was very interested in what you had mentioned, so perhaps you may have that in the breakout session if you have to leave for the Q&A, when you said that both men and women are part of the European network to end FGM. That is really important. You specifically mentioned that. And also the fact that you are part of the workshop where you had, of course, the amazing Dr. Leila Hussein work with you, and the importance, highlighting the importance of mental health for advocates as well as survivors. So thank you so much for that. We are moving on to our next presenter, and that is our wonderful Bev Booker. And she has been a Soroptimist since 1993. She's my friend. Bev has served at many levels of the organization, including Soroptimist International Midwestern Region Governor, SIA, which is Soroptimist International of the Americas, Federation board members, and numerous leadership positions at club level. In her current role as Soroptimist International Director of Advocacy, she works with the Soroptimist International UN representatives, the Advocacy Committee, and the SI Board to ensure that Soroptimist International is the global voice for women. Thank you so much for joining us, Bev, and you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be with you and all of these wonderful advocates who are working to ensure that FGM is eradicated and women and girls no longer have to go through this practice. SI holds a human rights approach to policies and programs aimed at ending harmful traditional practices. We prioritize dignity and the rights to life for women and girls. We work with partner organizations and communities, including men and boys, to raise awareness of the impact of traditional harmful practices. SI works to empower young women through education programs to understand their human rights in relationship to all harmful traditional practices. Next slide. Each biennium, the president of Soroptimist International gets to choose an international appeal. And President Sharon Fisher from 2019 through 2021 has chosen an appeal called The Right to Equality. What she aims to do in this appeal is bring the topics you see listed there: domestic violence, trafficking, forced and child marriage, female genital mutilation or cutting, rights of older persons, and migration to the forefront so that Soroptimists are informed of these issues and programs are created to stop all harmful traditional practices. Next slide, please. We use a three-pronged approach to our advocacy, and that includes awareness, advocacy, and action. We create awareness among our members, particularly about FGM, which is the first of the projects that President Sharon chose. So we help them to understand that female genital cutting or mutilation is a global issue, and that women and girls all over the world suffer the lasting effects of female genital mutilation. According to Maggie O'Kane from the Global Media Campaign, one girl is cut every 6 seconds, 200 million girls a year. So if you think about that, in the course of this 2-hour presentation, 12 girls will undergo FGM cutting or genital mutilation. Advocacy. We work with like-minded organizations to change global policy with a team of 21 UN representatives in 7 UN locations. We also encourage our members to raise awareness in their local communities by reviewing local laws that are harmful or missing and work to change them. Action. Through local and international projects, we work to end female genital mutilation in local communities. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide. Soroptimist International recognizes that change must come from within communities, and local activists are most effective in advocating for change. As part of our international appeal, The Road to Equality, Soroptimist International works in partnership with the Global Media Campaign to End FGM. We currently support 6 grassroots activists in 5 countries in Africa. The activists work to change norms and attitudes in their own communities through media campaigns. Next slide, please. The Global Media Campaign brings influential religious, political leaders together to learn about FGM. They then train advocates to use radio, TV, social media, and in-person gatherings to call for an end to the culture of cutting girls. Global Media then provides financial support to the activists so they can broadcast directly to their own communities in their own language using their own words. Through the Soroptimist 6 projects, Soroptimist International provides funding for 6 advocates. For example, to think about the impact they have, during International Women's Day, 22 TV and radio broadcasts were supported. These broadcasts reached nearly 38 million people across the different countries where the advocates work, producing 69 hours of broadcast content. Over Easter in 2020, Global Media Campaign and Soroptimist helped to fund 28 media campaigns in 6 countries, producing over 30 broadcast hours for the emergency coronavirus media campaign, reaching 48 million people. So in addition to working, doing their work to end FGM, the Soroptimist 6 were also active in their communities to create awareness of the coronavirus and how to protect themselves and their communities. As the Easter cutting season upon us, it's even more important now that we fund our FGM advocates. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to spend too much time because we're very lucky to have one of our Soroptimists with us right now who's going to be speaking, and she is the best one to talk about her work in our local community. But if you have any questions or information and you want to know how Soroptimist works, please leave a message in the chat, visit our exhibit booth, and take a look at some of our blogs and reports. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bev. You actually have 3 more minutes left, so we're very grateful for that. We shall offer that to our last presenter and maybe spend more time in the Q&A. So Ifra Ahmed, she is one of the Soroptimist 6, and we're very happy to have Ifra here with us today. She is an FGM survivor and the founder of the Ifra Foundation. She has been a strong activist against FGM both in Somalia and internationally, speaking at events hosted by the United Nations and World Bank, among others. Ifra is a UNHCR high-profile supporter and has been awarded International Person of the Year in 2018, when we still met at the United Nations for the CSW. Her foundation has been working on ending FGM in Somalia for almost a decade, and is currently working on groundbreaking campaign with UNFPA Somalia, which will positively impact the prevalence of FGM there. Thank you so much for joining us. Ifra, you have the floor.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, and thank you so much for having me. Nia, thank you actually for moderating this amazing event, and I think whoever is here, they're lucky to be here because all the information was provided is really amazing. Bev, she mentioned already everything that I want to say, but there's more to talk. For being part of the six Soroptimists, Somalia actually last year, I think now it's 1 year, and already one of the speakers mentioned, but last year when the COVID break in Somalia was very difficult for all of us as the activists and the campaigners and whoever was doing work in Somalia. Because we heard a lot of rumors that FGM was increased in Somalia because during the first lockdown, schools were closed, and then the Holy Quran places were closed. So we heard a lot of things that young girls are being cut, and there was no medical support. So global media campaign actually interferes support with Soroptimists, and I'm so lucky to say that Somalia is so grateful to be one of the 6 countries that being chosen, because through with the religious leader and the journalists that being part of the global media campaign trained have done so much work in Somalia in terms of bringing the religious leaders in the IDPs, especially those were the more humanitarian crisis, because they were in vulnerable places and there was no medical support. So what we did is through the Soroptimist support, we had an opportunity to make the journalists travel to where the women are and raise the awareness. For us was to make sure if there was young girl's cat, to bring her hospital, to make sure a mother who was giving birth or who had a labor, who gone through female genital mutilation, to find a facility of medical. And also to make sure that we supported and raise awareness that they should not be practiced on female genital mutilation. As you know that the first breakdown of the COVID, the whole international community left the country, or they locked in themselves in some way safe because nobody could understand the COVID and the situation. So it was very hard for our community, but we were lucky to work with the global media campaign, the funding being given by Soroptimists, with the young ambassadors, with the journalists and the religious leaders. And that was really one thing I can say, that the whole support was given to Somalia. It helped for our IDB women, and also, other ways of raising awareness, being on TV and, bringing interviews by women who've been affected on FGM or young girls who've been bleeding. I must say last year, since the COVID, I think there were 7 young girls died in IDBs within Mogadishu, that we met with the families and we spoke to them and they told us the story. And also a young woman, 18 years old, a mother on her first child, she died during her labor because of bleeding. So this is how my pandemic has affected us. But we were so lucky to be activists and also get trust by the Soroptimist and global media campaign, and believing the front line and giving the support. So I must say we thank the Soroptimist, because it's only Soroptimist and global media campaign who understood that the importance of the activists to do this grassroots work during this pandemic. We folks getting the religious leader and the community leaders, and they come on radios and TV to speak out what they believe. We get the result, for example, the River Somali region of Kenya, where one of the 6 Soroptimists doing amazing work, and myself, I say I will so appreciate Sadia, who's a really great woman that, never get tired of being stopped. Media campaign with the frontline activists say 98% people were believed FGM type 3 necessary and falling into only 5% for last 3 years. Because I can assure you, Somalia, we have been doing a lot of media campaign with Global Media Campaign and Ifra Foundation and other organizations who've been active. All the women who are Soroptimists are packing and lifting and campaigner. For example, Sierra Leone, Somalia, Kenya, and then Nigeria. And all of them are really, they have the unique of being an activist, unique being a voice of the voiceless. But again, if I talk about the challenges as well, because I was given to talk about the challenge and the positive. So the positive for the media was getting this emergency support and, Soroptimist supporting the GMC and believing the activists that has given opportunity, each of the 6 activists to deliver what it needs to be delivered. But the challenge is that the other organization, they don't really believe and trust the activists can deliver what needs to be delivered. When you trust and you give the opportunity for the grassroots organization, when you get the result. If I just say only Somalia, if you know or remember 2018, young girl who died on bleeding on female genital mutilation, the silence was broken by one of the journalists. The story became a national story. It was a Somalian story, but it became an international story. Deka, her story was broken by the journalists who have been trained by Global Media Campaign. I flew where the young girls died to make sure we meet the family and listen to their feelings and listen to them and see how they feel on FGM. Imagine in village like that, where FGM, it's normal for all of them. And now thinking of this pandemic where we cannot go and deliver what we need to deliver. But we're so lucky to say we have a radio that where we can, amplify our messages. We have a journalist who are willing to go and film the stories. And that is why I would say, Global Media Campaign are really believers of the activists. And I hope all the other organizations and the big sectors do same, because these activists are the people who are making difference. And these journalists are the people who are bringing this story. I think I'm going to end there, and I will take the question as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ifra. That was very heartfelt. We are very grateful that you shared with us, especially highlighting the importance of international organizations such as Soroptimist International, putting the trust and us funding your work at the grassroots level, where everything really happens and where you can have the most impact in the lives of the women that you're working and sometimes the girls that you're trying to save. And we're very grateful for the stories and, of course, for you continuing to do your work. This concludes our panelist presentations, and I would like to thank everybody on the all the panelists, and also our tech support, Sue Riney, and of course our timekeeper, Trish. And now we will be dividing into groups to have an opportunity to discuss some of the insights that we have heard from the panelists, and also if we can maybe do that for about 10 minutes. I see that we at this moment we are 67. So Sue, if you don't mind, maybe creating 7 groups. It will be roughly about 10 people per group. And we can then, after 10 minutes, resume. And if everyone can just share, from a person from each group can share an insight and an action that we maybe suggest for us to continue our work as we devote our time and our efforts to protect and protect the human rights of girls and end FGM. Thank you. We are going to go to the breakout room.
Message on your screen to join. Is there anybody still in the main room that needs to be assigned or be able to join? Is there anyone still in the main session that needs to know how to get in the breakout room?
That was very short.
To have a chance to at least socialize and get to know each other a little bit. I met another Soroptimist, and I really wanted to know what club you are in, Ingne. But we can go around, and I was in room number 2, so I don't mind going second. Could anyone from room 1 share with us an insight and perhaps an action that was discussed or suggested during the breakout, the short time that we spent away from each other? Have a bark? Okay, well, since we don't know, is anyone from group 1 willing to share with us?
I'm not sure. This is Angela. I'm not sure if I was in room 1
okay.
or not. I'm not sure.
You were. Please, Angela, go ahead.
Okay. In our room, we talked about the importance of medical personnel being knowledgeable on FGMC, the practice, and because somebody in our group said when FGM survivors are all over the world, they are everywhere, and therefore every medical school needs to include FGMC, the study of it, in their curriculum. So that was one of the things we talked about, policy.
Okay, that sounds like something that's very important and relevant in every country where girls and women are facing the risk of FGM education. I was in the second room, and we talked about the medicalization of FGM. And we also talked about we had a discussion about girls who have to, in some European countries, that have to have their hymen sewn back together by medical doctors. And we were thinking that perhaps we have to also include those girls who might not have a choice to have to undergo that surgery, maybe it could even be on the cosmetic surgery, and expand our maybe view of our understanding of what it is that FGM addresses. Because from as of right now, that is not necessarily part of the of what the 4 different types of FGM that we are usually discussing in the medical world. So it was a very interesting discussion that was way too short, and I will be taking it back to both the US and FGM network, as well as my task force in Los Angeles. Will anyone else like to go? Maybe group 3 or room 4?
Nina, I can speak for group 4. We were group 4, and there was 2 issues in ours, and one of them was making sure you educate yourself in your own country on what the actual situation is. And part of our appeal in the Soroptimist 6 is just that, knowing what's happening in your own country so that you can take appropriate action, or at least you know where to get help. And the action item was to maybe chat with 28 Too Many and look at their research and break it down, particularly, you know, because it's mostly Africa, I think. I was late joining, to see who is impacted with the increases, when some areas might be decreasing because there's a lot of activism going on. That's what we talked about.
Thank you. That was very informative. And also, I would like to introduce my president from Soroptimist International. So when we talked about the president's appeal, it was Sharon Fisher who has chosen FGM as one of the issues that we are dealing with through her presidency. So thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Nina.
Anyone want to go next? Let's say room 3 or 4 or no number.
I can talk if you like, Nina.
Yes, please, Christine. Thank you.
Yes, okay, thank you. I guess it was room number 6. I'm not sure. I was so impressed because of the technical possibilities. And we talked about different points. One of them was, of course, the problems of the girls and the women. They have fistula problems after having FGM. And we talked about the possibility to retrain the cutters. But it is possible, of course, but it is also a matter of status, because they have a status and the culture is deep in the souls, and therefore it is very hard to retrain the cutters. And then we talked about the different meanings between the religion. It is different if this is a religion from Islam or from other parts when FGM is being a part of this religion and of culture. And it was very interesting. Of course, it was too short, and we had Anne-Marie in our group as leader. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. We had some questions while the presenters were still speaking about religion. So I can imagine that was a very animated discussion, because if religion does not mandate the practice, and yet overwhelmingly in certain parts of the world and communities within the US and Europe, it is believed that it's a practice that has to be continued because it's a religious duty. It explains why some of us activists, we work closely with religious leaders and, of course, the traditional leaders. So it is a very challenging discussion that has to be had. And I remember when Angela presented, she did say that she has some of the interns. That was another question we had. What do the interns do in your organization? And the interns do go and speak with religious leaders. And you said that you did go to churches, but you haven't yet been to mosques. So we are anxiously awaiting for that second part of the outreach, community outreach. And of course, when I return to Los Angeles, we can collaborate, because we do that through our task force in the Los Angeles area. Would someone else like to go with another room and share some of the insights and maybe an action?
Well, I don't know. This is Dawn Marie Lemons, and I don't know if Ula, hello, Nina. I don't know if Ula is going to bring this up, but she had a really great idea, so I'll give her the credit for it, that we get together with our international partners and create an even larger network, if we can, to promote a Twitter campaign and other media, webinars, and so forth for International FGM Day, and really use that as an opportunity to spread the word worldwide.
Well, that sounds like we have to take that action. And I think that as Soroptimist, and of course through the President's appeal, what we are doing, we are already on the right path. It's something that I'm sure we shall continue, because as you saw, Ifra, she is a very enthusiastic activist, and of course working with the grassroots level, and of course having witnessed what she shared with us, which has been even more challenges during the COVID pandemic. It seems like our work is going to have to continue. So networking with other organizations, and the fact that now we all know and we have broken the silence on FGM, which has taken so long, but here we are. So Ula, thank you so much for that suggestion. And Dawn Marie, nice to see you, and thank you for joining us.
I'm in Indiana babysitting little 2-year-olds. So I wanted to actually ask one thing of all the campaigns to happen is we need to be really careful with our language as far as not using terms and thinking people know what they mean. So if they say a level 4 FGMs or whatever. So I feel like all of our, I don't even know what medicalization of FGM means, but I can figure it out. But I think if we want to communicate, we've got to use language that works. So I'm just making a big case for that.
Thank you. And since I use the word medicalization, I would like to explain that. And that means that in most communities, it's done at the local level, the cut-in, and the girl has to undergo the practice. So when it's moved from the community and from the family into the hospital, and it is performed by a medical doctor, the terminology used, it's called the medicalization of FGM. Unfortunately, we try to work against that, because whether it's done by a doctor or in the community, of course, we want to stop and end the practice of FGM. We do not want it to go and move into the hospital. That is not the aim. So thank you so much for pointing that out, Dawn Marie. May we have someone else who might want to share, please?
I would really like to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I found out about the history from Dr. Anne Marie, and considering that this predates so much of even our current Muslim Judeo-Christian tradition, and it actually, according to Anne Marie's studies, goes back to the slave trade of Arabs selling Africans, if I understand correctly, but whatever the case, it goes back to the slave trade. How about we join up with Black Lives Matter, which is a global movement right now, to add on that all these women matter, and we try to make just a global stop, because it's rooted in misogyny and control and power, and it's devastating. And we have our people who can be the voice of people who it's affected. What got me into this was hearing that 500,000 girls in the US are in danger of being FGMC'd. I still can't believe it. It's just amazing to me. Then I heard 2 TED Talks from some UK women, one of whose sister, and they were both FGM and survivors, and her sister ended up murdered by her father and some others. I mean, I can't accept this in our day and age. I don't care if it's a tradition. Take it back, understand the roots, and eradicate it. So thank you for everybody who's Soroptimist putting money into making these campaigns happen.
Thank you so much for saying that. And yes, we cannot allow this to continue. And we are very fortunate that through wonderful organizations like Soroptimist partnering with local activists, we can actually have an impact directly in the lives of the women and girls who are affected. And someone wrote that we need to continue to educate men in Africa, actually men everywhere, because this whole idea about men not wanting to marry a girl who was not caught, it continues to perpetuate the practice. So involving men in the conversation, both boys and men, of course, through education, it's really key and it's very important. And that was something that Aminata started to talk. And I'm not sure if Aminata is still with us because I know she had to leave. She probably did go. But it was...
I'm still here, Nina.
Please go ahead. Tell us more. Thank you.
Oh, about the men. So yes, I think here in the UK and certain countries in Europe, really, we must say that they are really trying to include men more and more and more. So in the how do I call it? The ambassador program within the network, the NFGM EU network. We had a man with us, and he worked with. I can't remember the name of the organization, but yes, he's from an affected community, and it gave us really a better insight of what men also believe around the practice, and how also gave us more force on in terms of sending a very strong message out there that this is not only a woman fight, it's also a man fight. And here in the UK, I've taken part in many workshops, I would say, that men are involved in. And so I'm quite happy and also optimistic for the future that men will be getting more and more involved in the fight against FGM. And especially in my country, Guinea, as well, we have some young voices, young men voices rising against this practice, which is so wonderful to hear. And at the community-based organization I'm working with at the moment, we have this project we starting soon. Is the main force task project. And I'm sure once it's ready, you will hear from it, and we will have more men on board to support us. And I think it's important to remember that, because in patriarchal societies, most societies like practicing FGM, men are decision makers. They're the one making the decision, so they must be included. They must be, if they don't know how to do it, they must be given the way or trained or educated in how to really they can be involved and make a difference. Yes, definitely. I think I'll stop it there.
That was really amazing. And since Sierra Leone, the country I work in, is we're neighbors, we also have the opportunity to work with young group of men who stand for women's human rights. So a lot of times when we have cases, very severe cases of women who might all be bleeding to death because the FGM that was performed on them, especially revenge FGM. And if you know about Bondo secret society, you know, unfortunately, when a girl or a woman tries to resist, not only they have to undergo FGM, but then there is a revenge FGM, which takes it to even a higher level. So we actually, the people who help us and help keep the woman alive, they are the young men that have been trained. So what you said, Aminata, about training, breaking the silence, it's been a long road. But we also, one of the Soroptimist 6 is Rudiato Touré. She works in Sierra Leone. Of course, Ifra knows her, and many of the other Soroptimists. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're still with us. I do see we still have about 1 or 2 rooms that we haven't heard from. And I do see 2 people who have raised their hands. Please go ahead, unmute yourself and ask the question or the comment. Okay. Is any other room willing to share with us insights and action?
Hello,
Trish.
This is Trish, a member of the core group. You've already heard the comments from our room about the importance of medical training for people afterward. As an older woman, I'm not only worried about the little girls younger than my granddaughter who are facing this vulnerability to FGM, but for the women who have to live with the lifelong consequences. And one of the lifelong consequences can be having very serious problems with delivery, but also problems with incontinence, both urinary and fecal. So I have been talking with there's a group in Canada that sends menstrual supplies around the world to countries where disposable products are not available. I have pointed out to them and think that we need to start taking action on providing washable products for women who have survived this practice but are left with lifelong consequences. We really have to look at the whole cradle to grave basic impact of this practice. It doesn't start just with the cutting. It goes on for the whole life. Thank you.
Thank you so much for saying that, Trish, and also for introducing yourself as a core group member. I will ask everyone to at least say a few words before we end the session. And I also we did have was it Aminata that mentioned the importance of the mental health and the whole idea of the effects of FGM. They are lifelong, which is why when we are working to prevent the practice, it's also really very important. So thank you for mentioning that. Is there anybody else who had a raised hand or didn't have a chance to speak about what happened in the breakout room, please? If not, then we can go to questions. We had a lot of questions, such as what is from Lynn Middleton? What is the rationale for medicalization of Fgm C? This is a physical violation that should not be tolerated under any circumstance. Will anyone from the panel like to address that, please?
I'm happy to talk about that.
So you, Maria. Yes.
It's a great question. And I think one thing I want to note to everybody is that FGMC is a social norm in communities where it occurs, meaning that it's been justified through a variety of, there are many reasons that communities will give for why this is continued, from religion to tradition to sexual control. I've actually heard the opposite of increasing sexuality to aesthetics, to the idea that it is an identity marker for the community. So it's important to recognize that, because it's a form of violence that has been justified throughout the centuries so that it does continue generation after generation. And all communities, all cultures around the world have social norms and have harmful social norms too. So I think it's important to kind of recognize that. So when you're brought up with something that is socialized and you believe that it's something that's normal, unless there's questioning to it, you're not going to change it, or you're not going to know that it's something to change. So with medicalization, it's just another way to kind of also, within communities practicing it, an idea that it makes it safer. And I'm putting safer in quotes because it doesn't make it safer, but communities are doing this as a way, in an idea that, well, if it's done in an aesthetic health setting, then it'll be better than if it's done by a traditional cutter who has no medical training. So again, it's just kind of another way to justify it and keep it continuing. And we do see many times those that are involved in medicalization. I'm really glad somebody, Nina, you defined it, and that question was brought up too, because there is inside lingo that we tend to use if you're not familiar with this issue. But those that are medicalizing it oftentimes come from within communities. And in the case in Michigan, advocates would not be shocked by this, but those who were not aware were shocked to learn that a doctor was carrying it out. And this doctor came from a community where it was practiced. So again, been so embedded that there's this idea that if you medicalize it, it can be safer. But it's, again, it doesn't make it safer. But that's part of the reasoning why FGMC persists and why healthcare professionals in some communities are also carrying this out well. And there's growing concern about an increase in medicalization because of simultaneously sort of a recognition that FGMC might not be okay in other settings. And we see this a lot in Asia. FGMC isn't talked about as much within Asia, but again, it's a global issue. And there is concern that it might be more medicalized within certain Asian contexts, which is a challenge in terms of working to end it as well. So that's just kind of a little bit of info about it.
Thank you so much, Maria. I would like to know if anyone else has a question that they might like answered right now. From break room 3, I heard someone mentioning that FGM is not done properly, but I didn't catch the whole explanation. Could you please explain this? Will anyone from the panel want to address this? Also, there was the question of when is International Fgm C Day? And that's a question that many of us know, which is February 6th. It is called the ZTD, Zero Tolerance on Fgm Day. Okay, we have about 10 minutes left. I would like to give an opportunity to everyone on all the panelists to say a final thought, and then we shall conclude the meeting. Maria, would you like to go first?
Sure, I'm happy to. I just want to say thank you again for inviting me to be part of this discussion, and I'm glad to see that so many people feel involved in looking to take action or trying to understand how you can take action. And overall, I think that to address FGMC, we do need to work in various areas. So the conversation around working with healthcare professionals, that's definitely one. Nina mentioned working with religious leaders, that's another one. Policy, legislation, education, it's all needed. We need a multi-sectorial approach to this issue. And I'm glad to hear that being reflected in the conversation here today. So thank you for letting me be part of this.
Thank you so much, Maria, and keep up the great work and send us all those petitions, because we're going to make it happen. Angela, would you like to go next, please?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I just want to thank you, Nina, and everybody else for inviting me and having me on here, and being among so many wonderful people, ladies on the panel. It's an honor to be part of it, and I'm just glad that we have the opportunity to share what we do, the work that we do, and to see the many people that attended today give us credence that people are appreciating this work that we do, and we should never stop, and we should continue to do it, because I always say that the cutters never stop. They don't take a break, so we cannot afford to take a break. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angela. And we also have to recognize the economic aspect of FGMC everywhere where it is practiced. So when we are expecting the cutters to drop the knife, as we have some programs in Sierra Leone, there are some amazing projects that we have where we train the cutters and we continue to give them the relevance in the community and assist them in earning money in a different way. So that's also something that we need to keep in mind. Dr. Wilson, would you like to go next, please?
Well, again, thank you, everybody, and thank you for some great questions and breakout rooms. I've thoroughly enjoyed today. I think my point would be just to say everybody's business is FGM. Whatever community you live in, wherever in the world, there is something you can do, whether you go yourself, whether you fundraise, whether you advocate, whether you tweet or Facebook, it doesn't really matter. But I would just say that my ask would be that everybody is touched by today and does something differently as a result of this seminar. There's lots of information. I'm not just plugging our website, but there's lots and lots and lots of information on our website. It's no good just sitting on our website. Please do share it widely. There's a paper on medicalization there. There's going to be one going up in a couple of weeks' time on religion that I'm just proofing at the moment. So there's all sorts of information there. And there's this app as well that means that you can get all our information or share it with your populations in areas that have less access to Wi-Fi. So my hope will be that you will actually be impacted as well by this, and you will do something different. If we all work together, as I believe we should, there is no competition between charities or egos or anything like that. That's not why I do this work. I do this work because I want to provide and make sure that girls like Fatima don't have this in the future. So let's all work together. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson. And someone is asking for the tweet handle. So if you can please enter that in the chat, or any other, I know you already entered the links, but any other information would be very welcome. Aminata, would you like to say a few last words, please?
Oh, yes, Nina, thank you so much again for this opportunity. It was such a great pleasure to be here and to listen to all these wonderful women. So my last word is, just to remind again everyone, as the ladies spoke before me said, FGM is a social norm, and fighting a social norm take a lot of consistency, a lot of courage, and all hard work, but also a lot of coordination within the organization and group that are working to end FGM. So as Dr. Wilson said, working together would be the solution, and that's what we're doing here today. So I'm optimistic for the future, and I'm sure we will end this harmful practice. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aminata. Bev, would you like to please give us your last thoughts?
Thank you, Nina. Well, I want to say that activists are the real heroes or heroines in this case, because they are working in the communities to end this practice. And I know there's a lot of Soroptimists on this webinar. So I just want to remind you all that each one of you can make a difference. And not only by looking to your own community to see what the laws are and what you can do, but also making a donation to the President's appeal. If you look at the Soroptimist International website, there is a link that'll take you to your federation where you can each make a personal donation and ensure that we can continue funding these activists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bev. And of course, all our clubs can continue to make the donation through the President's appeal. And it doesn't have to be only around December 10th. It can be today. Thank you. And we would like to invite Ifra to say a few last words.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm very proud to see a lot of passionate people who spoke about on FGM. And as Anna said, this is for everybody's business, and it's true. FGM is everybody's business, because your neighbor's daughter, the daughter who is going to school with your own daughter, it's one who be subjected, whether it's in where you are or whether it's in back home. And I would say, Soroptimist, please keep supporting us, because you support, we could make a difference. And I'm very proud to say, on behalf of all other activists who are making great protests, thank you so much, and keep supporting us. And we all keep going to do good things. And 28 too many, thank you so much for all your hard work. We all active on social media, and we see you all your hard work. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Angela, I say hi to you, and thank you for awarding me last year. Thanks all.
Thank you so much, Ifra, and keep up the good work, and we will stay in touch and do our best to support you and the other Soroptimist 6. And finally, I would like to invite our core group members for the North America and Europe core group. Together, we helped organize this event. I know Trish already came on and she introduced herself. And I believe Lucy and Ula for sure are on the call. And would you please introduce yourself? Of course, Daniela and Zareen, if you are here as well, please.
Thank you, Nina. Can I go first? Because
Yes.
I have to go to another meeting.
Yes,
So,
Ula.
yeah, thank you so much. And congratulations. It has been really a wonderful event. I'm so impressed by all the speakers with their knowledge and experience. And thank you. I am a Soroptimist. I am at the moment the assistant of Director of Advocacy, and I'm also a member of the core group. So I want to thank my own organization for organizing and sponsoring this event. Action speaks louder than words. So I think we can be in agreement that this is what we are going to do. And the other speakers said something about we are working together, like it was also my idea. So let's continue that. So thank you for participating today, also to the audience. Thank you very much. And have a nice day, evening, morning, whatever, where you are in the world.
And thank you, Ula. Thank you so much. And Lucy, are you on here? Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, my name is Lucy. I am part of the core group, North American and European core group. And I'm also the assistant liaison director of US caucus at the UN. And I also am from Rosaria Memorial Trust. And our main trust is mainly on child marriages. So child marriages and FGM are twins, as the United Nations has named them, the twins, the twin issue. I would like to start by congratulating you, Nina, for hosting such a fantastic webinar, and I would like to thank also all the presenters today. You were so fantastic, you were so informative, and that we really, really appreciate. And I would like to also thank the Soroptimists for enabling us to have this platform today, and for all the work, and especially President Sharon for the presidential, for having this presidential appeal. Is FGM is one of your issues. So, and child marriages, I was so excited to see it there. It is really, really a big issue. And yeah, I've coming here. I was coming from an event called Voices of Young Women. They were talking about issues of ending violence against women. FGM is a violation of human rights as well as violence against women. So there's need for all of us to engage, for all of us to help change laws, even when there are no laws, to make sure that those laws are put in place to end FGM and to fight child marriages as well. So I am so encouraged by the excitement that was shown today around ending FGM, and let's continue fighting together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucy. And I would like to also call Zareen. Zareen, are you on the call? Perhaps not. Zareen was on the other call with the Young Voices. And how about Daniela? They are also part of our core group for North America and Europe. Well, we all work together to make this happen, and we're very grateful. I would like to say a final thank you to Soroptimist International for co-sponsoring the event, and also for all the amazing work directly with the Soroptimist 6, and encourage all the Soroptimists to join for our event tomorrow, where President Sharon will be speaking. And also we do have another North America and Europe caucus event tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. And in closing, I am very grateful that you have taken the time to join this event. We probably will have the link maybe on the website, on the platform for the CSWs, and I'll be very happy to send it out to anyone. If you send an email, I will add my email in the chat. Or of course, you can email us at the North America and Europe caucus. And thank you. And together we can and we will end this human rights violation. We can end FGM. And this is done every day by all of us breaking the silence and by all of us taking action and joining forces and having a passionate and enthusiastic and effective network. So I thank you for being here today.